I'm Chris Fox, and this is The Bourbonite. So, collecting whiskey. It's a thing. People do it. Some people that do it don't even drink whiskey or bourbon. They just collect it. Kind of a strange circumstance to me, but people do it nonetheless. In fact, in some circumstances, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal did an article about how putting money in collecting whiskey and bourbon may actually perform better than your standard 401k. I'm not taking that bet, but let's talk a little bit about what it means to collect whiskey. Some people collect just for nostalgia's sake. Their granddad drank a specific kind of bourbon, and they want to drink the same thing that he drank to have that connection, even if it's a terrible bourbon. That happens, and it's not uncommon, but it can lead to the rabbit hole of collecting. Then there's a number of avid collectors that their sole intent is to find the most valuable bottle. Again, these are the types that may not necessarily even bother drinking their whiskey. It's a sin if you ask me, but they do it, and some of them make good money doing it. It's kind of an interesting place. So what's rare and what's valuable? I personally am not much of a collector. Call it either the small fortune that I don't have, or just the sheer amount of time that it takes. It's not something that I've gotten into all that much, but it is an intriguing process. So the Whiskey Advocate magazine actually kind of laid out some of the top bourbons that you might be interested in going after if you want to get into this whole collecting process. One of the rare bourbons that you want to look out for is a Wild Turkey bottle with an age statement. Now, Wild Turkey stopped making the age statements in the early 90s, which means anything that's got an age statement predates the early 90s, making it obviously rare, but also old. Cabin Still Bourbon. Now, this is a bourbon that predates 1972-ish, and it's gotten extremely rare since then, but there are still some people that will have it tucked in a back room or behind a bar or even in a basement and that sort of thing. It's said to be a good quality bourbon for flavor, but it's also a collector's item, as it was made at the old Stetzel Weller distillery. Another thing to look for is old stuff. Quite literally anything that's got the label old on it somewhere. Old Grandad, Old Taylor, Old Fitzgerald. All of these can be considered at least somewhat collectible. Definitely anything that's got that old label probably has the potential to be a rare or collectible whiskey. Another collector's item is, well, the tricky part is to look for a dusty bottle of Old Weller. Now, the current stuff is quite good, and justifiably the old stuff is quite good as well. How good, I can't really say. I've never had a bottle that's been more than a few years old, but if you find an old, dusty, Old Weller bottle, it's probably worth picking up. And then there is the legendary Pappy Van Winkle. Interestingly enough, that's one of those cheap bourbons, but for some reason, somebody somewhere, and I'm sure there's more history behind it, and I'll try to dig a little bit further another time, but someone decided that this was some of the best tasting bourbon they've ever had. And so that $18 bottle, or whatever it costs, is suddenly worth $500, $1,000, $1,500 on the gray market. I don't have enough money to even try this stuff. I can't tell you if it's good, bad, or just like any other bourbon. But what I do know is people will pay it, and it is a highly sought-after item. Just ask any liquor store owner. They'll kind of laugh at you if you ask them outright if they have Pappy. The real key to collecting is anytime you're looking for something that you might consider rare, and there's plenty of resources online that you can look for, there are counterfeiters out there. These crooks will go through long, tedious processes of restoration to make a bottle look like it's never been opened and throw something crappy in there. Or worse, have a bottle that's half full and then water it down, expecting you to never actually drink it because it's such a rare collectible item. Crooks are quite creative, but there are ways to spot a fake, and I recommend if you're going to start collecting at all, Definitely read up on the proper way to spot fakes as well as to determine the exact ages on bottles. Even little details like how far the whiskey sits in the bottle if it's actually been unopened can really tell you if it's a counterfeit piece or if it's real. But in the end, let's be real, we all drink bourbon. I would hope you do, that's why you're watching this. But if you want to collect, rock and roll. But if you're gonna collect, buy 2 bottles. One to put on your shelf and let it get dusty, another one to actually drink. Because you need to try it and you need to gloat about how amazing that bottle is. And then maybe you have a backup if it's just that good. If it's that good, it's hardly worth keeping on the shelf. So that's it. If you feel so inspired, get out there and collect, pick up a few bottles, or don't. Keep buying the stuff that you like. That's what bourbon's all about. Drink the things that you enjoy and, I guess, relish in what they have to offer. So if you like what you've seen, hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, because there's plenty more bourbon know-how to come. I'm not going to cut all that out. And then through a fantastic process of deceivery, and I'll use one of those tidbits and I'll mix them together. Well, la-dee-da. Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Old and dusty bottle. Old and dusty.
Fuck, well, we've got dust. Lots of dust.
Write my name in it.